Hi, I'm Dr. Quinn Denny, the president and work psychologist of ioPSYte. And this is the first of what I hope will be many valued client ioPSYte highlights. And today I've got on here with me Sage Jalofsky, more affectionately known as the Solar Sage. And we're going to ask him some questions. And I'm just excited to let him share with viewers out there what he does for his business, because I find it really exciting. And I find it something that's a very neat concept and something that once embraced is just extremely valuable. So Sage, welcome. Thanks so much for taking your time to be here. It's a real privilege to interview you and spend more time with you this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Quinn. It's a pleasure to be on here with you as well and to be speaking with all of the viewers out there.
Awesome, awesome. Well, let's get started. We'll try to make this, quick and informational, of high value. I know people around everywhere are busy. You're always busy. Want to make the most use of your time. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your business? What do you do exactly?
Yeah. So I help people understand and transition to solar. Solar technology, photovoltaics, the magic rectangles that people see on the roofs everywhere. This is a technology that's been around for decades now, since the 50s and 60s. It was first used on satellites up in space. And it's gotten improvements over time, but the base concept of the technology hasn't changed that much. We're using silicone cells, which are used in computer chips, fun fact, as well. And the computer chips, the silicone that's not pure enough to be used in a computer chip, can be used for solar panels. So the two industries have actually kind of grown side by side, computers and solar. And now people are using it on their roofs, on the ground, and all sorts of ways to create clean, sustainable, abundant energy.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I feel like as much time as we spend together, I'm always learning something new, which is really my intense desire is to know my clients and know what they do, understand their business to be of high value. And as you were describing that, I was having this fond memory of I had a watch when I was a kid that had some solar cells in it. And it just came back
Yeah,
to you were describing that and that technology having been with us for quite a while. And
yeah,
just remembering how cool it was that that watch charged up. So thanks for kind of jogging that memory. That's awesome. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
find yourself interested in this? Like, how did you get here? What originally drew you to this business, to this technology?
Yeah, so I didn't go to school for solar specifically, and I think a lot of people kind of come to it in different ways. I actually, started off doing graphic design for a while and English teaching, and I first got interested in solar though as a young kid when my parents talked about it. My dad worked in solar back in the 80s when it was a slightly different technology where they had the hot water panels, which, fun fact, they were actually on the White House for a little while. One of the presidents took them down. He didn't like them. But but yeah, so that's where the interest first kind of peaked, was just learning about the technology a little bit as a kid and thinking it was very interesting and mystical how these panels can just quietly sit there and produce electricity. um, so as an adult, I was looking to transition out of some of the different customer service sort of roles that I had and looking for a new industry. And I thought, solar seemed, I did some research, market research, and I saw that solar was growing and looked like it was going to keep growing into the future. And it's done exactly that. I've been in here in the industry for about 6 years now, and just seen incredible growth in that period.
Oh, yeah, that's very cool. And I know personally from working with you and from having had solar integrated into our home, how
Yeah,
passionate you are about solar and about the people you take care of, like me. So
yeah,
that's great. It's great to know. And I didn't know that your dad had had been experienced with that technology too. So that's also very cool. Uh,
yeah.
for those of us who aren't technical, how does solar technology work? Is there a way you can describe it to us so that we can kind of understand it and grasp the concept?
Yeah, so I'll start off explaining it how I would to like a middle schooler. Um,
That's me.
and yeah, yeah. So at the end of elementary or middle school, somewhere around that age, people learn about, or kids learn about photosynthesis, right? And solar is essentially a technology that functions a lot like plants using photosynthesis. They're converting, light energy from the sun into energy that they can utilize. So for them, it's food. For us, it's electricity. Okay. And what happens is that these panels, they've got a few different layers in the panels, and when the sunlight hits them, it creates a charge, electrical charge. Okay, that charge then funnels through the panel, through some wires into the house, and creates electricity in the home. So DC current is what the panels produce. AC current is what your home uses primarily, what flows through that main breaker box. So there is an inverter that's attached to the solar panels that converts that DC to AC power. And those are really the two main components of the system, is that inverter and the solar panels. So
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna take a crack at this just for myself and everybody out there. So
yeah,
panels go on the roof. Uh, they're kind of like the leaves then of the house. As
yep,
the sun hits them, they capture that energy through several layers. That energy then goes in DC form to a
yep.
converter, which turns it into AC, which is the type of energy homes and businesses use. And then basically that powers what we're turning on and off all day.
Exactly. Yep. You hit the nail on the head.
Okay, well, you're a good teacher. So that's great. Yeah, fantastic. What do you find to be, what are some of the major advantages of integrating solar power into a home or office?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and it does depend on people's goals. There's a lot of advantages. So when I'm speaking with a homeowner or a business owner about solar, I do try and find out what their primary concerns and goals are. But a few of the big advantages are long-term savings. That's the probably the number one thing that people think about and talk about and are attracted to with solar power. If you buy a system outright, you're investing in that technology, but you're essentially able to eliminate future electric costs entirely. Now, what a lot of people do is they might not have the thousands of dollars required to invest in that equipment right away, or they want to keep that cash for other things, other home improvement projects. So they finance the solar, and at that point, the goal is essentially replacing an existing bill and redirecting the expenses that you were already paying for electricity and funneling that instead into a power plant that you own. And now you're investing in your home through that power plant. You're paying your monthly bill there. You're getting electricity from that. So that's the savings side of it for both homes and businesses. And there's also federal tax credits and sometimes state tax credits and other incentives that people can benefit there on the savings side. Now, beyond that, there's the environmental component of solar, where when people utilize solar energy, it's not utilizing combustibles, fossil fuels, and things like that are non-renewables and have an impact on the air quality, right? So areas that use more solar and wind tend to have better air quality. And sure, we can all agree, that's kind of fundamental to human health and existence. So, people are doing it for themselves and their own health, but also for their kids and the next generations. So that's the financial, the environmental, and then another big one is, energy independence. When people think about solar, you're able to produce your own energy at home there. And if you have a battery tied in with that system or generator, you're not reliant on the utility central infrastructure, solely at least for your energy needs. That's a very empowering feeling for people. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you and I just recently reviewed my electric bill, and
yeah,
my system's been in place, I think, since August.
yeah,
We're already starting to see the savings. Uh,
yeah.
predictive, through the design of the system and everything. And, one question that homeowners might have in particular is, let's say they finance their system. What happens if they go to sell the house? What does that look like?
Yeah, really good question. So a lot of people have concerns about that. They might have heard something or read something online. And the reality is a lot has changed in the industry over the years. There's different programs that people use to get solar. And so that might vary how that works when you do go to sell that house. So the first thing that's really important to know is if you have documentation on that system, or if you just got solar or getting solar, make sure to keep good documentation on that system, because it's going to make it easier to explain it and to transfer that to the new owners if you have that.
Yeah,
If it is an ownership, what's that?
can be transferred.
Can be transferred. It can be transferred. Yeah, if you have ownership, it can be transferred very easily in two ways. The new owners can take over, like for your loan, they could take over solar loan on that system if they wanted to. They see, hey, this is saving, money, or that it could actually be paid off and rolled into their mortgage at the time of purchase with the house. So that's also a common way that people do it.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I didn't mean for you not to finish your thought, so sorry if I interrupted. Go ahead and finish your thought.
No, that's pretty much it. Some people do choose to finance. Some folks pay the system off with cash or self-finance, utilizing a home equity line of credit. Other people do use leases or PPAs, power purchase agreements, which is kind of like a lease to get solar sometimes. And you can still transfer that when you sell the house. It's just going to be a little bit of a different process. So I do trainings for realtors and things like that as well. And I think the main thing when you do go to sell your house is just, again, having that documentation for your system as much as possible, and also getting a realtor who is comfortable and knowledgeable around, how does solar work, how to talk about it with, a new buyer or seller.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, I think, and we tend to sometimes be intrepid about what we don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And technology and whatnot is a big deal. Few other logistical questions that just came to mind, so I'm kind of throwing you a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
You're capable and so knowledgeable. Critters. So I know our neighborhood's maturing. The trees are getting taller. There's squirrels. There's pigeons. Is there any kind of concern with having that kind of equipment on the roof of the house or business? Is there anything that should or can be done?
Yeah, really good question. So like we did for your home, we included a critter guard system, which is a specially designed rubber coated steel mesh that wraps around the base of that system and just fills that few inch gap between the panels and the roof. That keeps out, squirrels and birds, and prevents, any sort of damage, or also eliminates debris and things like that. So that's a solution that we can include with systems. And most companies should be able to provide you with that solution if you ask them about it. Some will include it automatically, and some will not. Some will have a conversation with you about it. So it is good to ask.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And what comes to mind too is I know here in Colorado we get a lot of snow, and you and I have talked about getting a snow guard. Like, it's great because the sun's so powerful, it melts the snow off pretty quickly, and I think it probably cleans the panels, and we're back to that panel being exposed to the solar power. I think, if you're out there and you're experiencing, that, or you're thinking solar, Sage can also make sure that you get snow guards if you need that kind of thing, which I thought was really cool too.
Yeah, really good point there, Quinn. Depending on how where the system is placed on your roof, and if you have, a patio right under the panels on the edge of the roof, then you might have snow that would slide off. So that's where a snow guard could come into play. It's not necessarily a concern in other places, depending on the location. So that'll be house specific. Yep.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention one other thing, just coming back to the resale and the transfer with the homes. What the recent studies have shown is that homes with solar do sell on average a lot quicker than homes without solar. That study was done 10 years ago, saying that it actually increases the speed by about 20%. and on average increases the resale by about 4 or 5% across various markets. And solar has only grown in adoption since then. So I just wanted to mention that piece of it when you are thinking about, adding value or investing in it. That resale piece does come into play. It will vary slightly if it's owned or leased, but even if it's a lease system, people are starting to see that as more and more attractive as they're looking at homes.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can totally see that being a value add, like a feature to a home, but this
Yep.
one has solar. Uh,
Yep.
this is what inflation could look better for us as pricing is always, on the rise, it seems. So especially lately. So that's great. Is solar, I know people give a pushback sometimes. Is solar energy a good solution for everyone?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, it's not a good solution for every home. It is a good solution for everyone in terms of, the more solar we have, the less reliant we are on burning combustibles. One-time things that add particulates to the air. But that being said, not every roof is a match made in heaven for solar. We do a roof analysis and check to make sure you've got enough sunlight exposure. That's kind of a prerequisite, and also just enough roof space for it to be beneficial. So, not for everyone. There is a pre-qualification that we do for roofs to make sure that the roof is qualified before we ever do a design for someone.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm always someone like, I'm big into science and evidence and, because we make decisions on that stuff and it plays out.
Yeah.
And so that's good to know because it is a scientific process. Like, hey, we can predict how your system will look like and what it can produce. And so that's really cool. And many people probably don't even know, like you're talking about that. I remember being in a business networking event and there was an oil and gas person there and just described that, we're so far removed sometimes from our food, from our power systems, that the source of our power. I don't think many people realize a lot of times when they're turning on and off lights or they're using electricity, unless it's nuclear, correct me if I'm wrong, but unless it's nuclear, something's always burned somewhere, whether it be coal or something, right? Like there's always burning going on to create this benefit, this convenience we have in our buildings.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's true for solar too, right? There's energy that goes into making the panels, right? They don't just float down from the clouds, from the heavens. We have to mine the materials for these, and there's a big process that requires a lot of energy to melt down the ore to make the silicone to make the panels. However, once you do that, they can produce energy for decades. No one even knows how long these panels can possibly last with the latest generations. We warranty all of our systems for 30 years. So we know that they're going to produce energy for at least that long. But the energy payback on a solar panel is about 1 year, meaning that the amount of energy required to make it is offset after 1 year. So you look at that versus 30, it's better than the alternatives out there. Yeah.
That's a great ROI, return on investment. That's just fantastic. Yes, that's good. Yet another thing I learned.
Yep.
Interview that I did not know. So yeah, what do you find? I think this is a great question for all viewers. What do you find to be the most common misconceptions or maybe objections to integrating solar power? And do you find these objections are legitimate, or for the most part, are they really just misunderstandings? Not knowing about the technology and the process.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of them um, are misconceptions or outdated knowledge. The internet is a beautiful place, access to so much, but the quality control on that knowledge is not there, right? It's an open forum, if you will. And so a lot of the within a lot of different industries and technology spaces, the technology is evolving quicker than the information around it can keep up with sometimes, right? And so for example, people looking at, they think that in order to get solar, they have to have thousands of dollars up front to pay for it, right? That's a common misconception.
I always
Uh,
thought.
right? Yeah, you thought that. Um, and so nowadays you can own that system, finance it, zero money out of pocket. In a lot of cases, you're paying like equal to or less than your monthly bill was with the utility out of the gate, and then you're setting yourself up for the long-term savings. Another, objection though that I think people give that is pretty legitimate is, we might be moving here in the next year or two. If somebody's pretty sure that they're moving in like 1 or 2 years, I don't really, I'm like, hey, let's talk again once you move. If they think we may be moving 5 to 10 years from now, there's no reason not to look at solar, because again, if you can have a financial investment that saves someone money, or even breaks even right away, and then you're setting that next homeowner up for success too, there's no reason to hold back in that scenario. So just kind of depends there. Another concern or objection might be around aesthetics, and that's just a personal preference. But there is things we can do to, putting it on the back versus the front in some cases, just kind of depends. So we do take that into an account. The newer panels are a lot sleeker. They're all black, as the ones you can see kind of over my shoulder. So the aesthetics are a little bit sleeker. Other concerns that people might have is how long that they're going to last. A lot of people only think solar panels last 10, 15 years. As I just mentioned, we warranty them for 30. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's interesting too, as you describe the aesthetics of it, not something I necessarily thought about, but I also think, maybe psychologically what's really interesting is it's like when you get a car of a certain model and then all of a sudden you notice that car everywhere. Same thing for me. It was like I hardly noticed solar panels in our neighborhood till I had them. And
Yeah.
then I was noticing them, and then it was a cool thing. I'm like, oh, well, there's more. Another house. Boy, there's a lot of houses that have made that choice to integrate solar. So yeah, those are great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think, a lot of times our objections are our fears. And like you say too, I always thought that I had to spend thousands of dollars. So typically I was holding my wallet when that would come up,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So that's good. Yeah, great answers to that question. What do you think on being a work psychologist? I want to ask, what do you think are some of the emotional or psychological benefits that you hear actual customers say when they either they decide to integrate or they get that integration completed? What are you hearing them saying about it on an emotional level?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I have had people tell me that it's hard for them to articulate it because we live in a paradigm where, we've just been, we're conditioned to pay the utility. In most places in the country, there's not an alternative. They're a monopoly, quite literally, right? They're one of the only legal monopolies in the US. And so, we're conditioned to that response, and we just pay when we get that bill. Some people see it and they get annoyed by it. Some people, just put it on auto pay because they don't want to be annoyed by it, and they know that they don't have another choice. So when people get solar, I think that it is, what I've heard is, it's an empowering feeling. It's a peace of mind knowing that they have the energy production, at home where they're using it. They feel like they're um, taking care of their family, in a more real way. Being able to produce the power, they're taking care of the environment. There's a sense of pride around it and empowerment. So these are the common things that I hear. But I'd love to flip the question around, since you are a recent owner of solar. Like, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's I know from research, and you mentioned research with misconceptions of solar earlier. I find that to be the case in work psychology. We
Mm,
book or something, or they read something on the internet, but they don't know the research, the past research typically, and even current research. It takes a while for it to infuse the market and the common knowledge and in society. So, I definitely agree with that. And For me, I think, one of the biggest advantages has been that feeling you're talking about. There's a good feeling to feeling efficient, self-efficient,
Mm,
and I know in areas of life being totally self-efficient isn't healthy, but I think when it comes to energy like this, when it comes to some technology like this, it's a great feeling. It's a good thing. The savings was a big thing for me. So as a businessman, like looking forward to the future and looking at inflation and saying, hey, I am proactively offsetting costs. That was nice, feeling like I have some
yeah.
control. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think, there's the technology part that's a lot of fun. I have an app on my phone. You've showed me and trained me how to use that. If you're watching out there, it shows the power your panels are producing. It's got intelligence to it. It can adjust how the system's working based on how it's been, receiving feedback on the solar energy into itself. So that's really cool. And then, looking at a bill together, the other thing that I thought was really great and cool for those who, I know there's a lot of environmental debate. Like you're saying, there can be misinformation out there, but for those who are looking to do what they can do, to reserve our clean water sources and energy and things like that, create clean energy. On my app, it tells me how many trees I've potentially saved and planted.
Yeah.
I thought was really, really cool. And there's another one on there, and I'm forgetting what it is. I always look at it, but then I
Yeah.
forget because I get so excited about the trees.
So I think the trees are tangible, right? So you can visualize them. The other one is carbon dioxide, and like tons of carbon dioxide. And I think they do the trees because the carbon dioxide is harder to visualize what a ton of that looks like, right? Um, but but it is one of the biggest things that people can do to reduce their carbon footprint
Yeah.
and impact as a person. And a lot of people, I think, would like to do that, but don't really know where to begin. They don't think recycling really has a big impact, or other things that they do. They feel a little hopeless around it. And I think solar does bring a lot of hope to folks that are wanting to find ways to have a real tangible impact.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I remember in my undergrad, I had to write. We had an environmental study about the rainforests and a lot of our forests that are being cut down. That's a big part of the atmosphere. And I did a study on recyclables, and I remember reading. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of plastics are burned. So like plastic drinking water bottles and things are burned. And I've made
Yeah.
this there where I'm trying for the most part to use my canteen. I've
Yeah.
healthy plastic in there that I can drink that I know is not putting, bad hormones in my body, and stainless steel, that kind of thing. So yes, it's a
Yeah.
really, really good point. And I think peace of mind is another nice piece of that. So I've worked with you enough to know now that you have a very positive customer interaction style. Your approach to me compared to lots of what I have experienced and perceived to be a lot of door knockers out there. It's a bit more of feels more of a pressureful situation. I was
Yeah.
always resistant to that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your interaction, which has been so refreshing for me. What's your philosophy of working with customers with integrating solar and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I love that question. And I think, unfortunately, within any sort of sales, consulting, just business, our world in general, right? Uh, there's some outdated and inefficient techniques that people use in terms of pressuring. I don't like those as much as everyone else, right? As a consumer.
Sell
And
style.
so, my approach to people is really just boils down to the golden rule, treat others how I would want to be treated. And and I think how that shows up is coming from a place of service, asking questions, um, really getting to know someone's individual needs and concerns, and addressing those, and customizing it. It's a big reason why I choose the partners and providers that I've chosen, so that I have multiple product options and offerings that I can tailor something to someone's needs, and not just push a one size fits all solution down somebody's throat. So I feel very blessed to have found those solutions that I'm able to customize for folks. and I don't need, I don't need to rely on, those pushy tactics in order to make a living for myself. So I like treating people with respect and creating win-win value add relationships. I also do a lot of business through referrals, and that's my favorite way. I think of a client as a long-term relationship and not just a means to an end. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, if you're watching out there or viewing this and you're really interested in solar, I can tell you from personal experience that Sage is such an authentic person. And, we had him into our home and we were talking through solar. I mean, I can tell you that he's saying legitimately what he does. He answered all our questions. You were there, Sage, like just kind of, answering questions. I never felt pushed. In fact, I felt like if at any point I said, I don't want this or I'm not interested, it was almost like you're asking us, is this something you want and something that's valuable to you? And if it's not, it's okay. And
yeah.
I really like that style too. I find in what I do, it's very dynamic. Sometimes we have to make changes to overcome hurdles. And I'm not a fan. I mean, certain things work universally, but I'm not a fan of a box methodology. Like follow our, X step program and you'll, be this or that. That's typically not what happens. And so just
Yeah.
really refreshing style that you've got. Thank you very much for what you've done for us. I just continue to enjoy the benefits. And
Well,
let's say
I
some,
appreciate that. Yeah.
yeah, you're welcome. I appreciate you too. Let's say somebody's interested out there. They're watching this and they're saying, hey, I am very interested in solar. What's the next step? How do they get a hold of you? And what does that next, that next step or that next interaction or contact look like? Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So typically, the best way to get a hold of me is you can my digital contact card, which we'll put in the notes under this video, potentially up in the little corner here of the video as well, if we can make that happen. But you can also find me on Facebook, the Solar Sage, LinkedIn, Sage Jalofsky. My work phone is 720-443-0427. Text me, call me. That's where I start with everyone anyways. I have a Calendly scheduler that people can use to book a call with me. But you can always just shoot me a text. And, the first step is to do a roof check, make sure, and then just have a few minutes conversation to see, based on your situation, your roof, your house, and what your goals are, if I'm going to be able to help you. If not, I don't want to waste either of our times, and I'll just, let you know, it's not a good fit. But we do have an ambassador referral program that a lot of people can benefit from who maybe they don't own their house yet, or they have too much shade. They're not a good candidate. They can still refer people to us for consultations and actually get a benefit for doing that through our grassroots marketing campaign. So
That's great. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll
yeah.
definitely put information on this video and just want to say thanks for taking your time. You are a value add for sure for me. And this has been one of the first, I think, highly successful right now, out of the gate, ioPSYte value client highlights. So everybody, Sage Jalofsky, the Solar Sage, if you're interested in producing your own power, and all the advantages it can bring, reach out to this guy. He'll get you taken care of. I promise he'll treat you well. Thanks so much for being on.